I've been asked to speak about the three extraordinary births that I had um, with my three children. And the first one, I had decided before I'd even got pregnant that I really wanted to have a home birth. All the reading I'd been doing, my previous experiences with hospitals and doctors had not been extremely positive. So I felt a home birth was right for me. And everything was going wonderfully with this birth, with this pregnancy, and all of a sudden at 32 weeks, my baby's diagnosed as being in the breech position, which is bottom first, coming out bottom first, and I was told that if she stayed that way, there would be no home birth. This completely rocked my world and threw me into a spin. And I realised just how committed I was to having a home birth. So I then just did everything I could to try and make that still happen. So I researched breech birth, natural breech birth, because generally speaking, in the Western world, a breech is now delivered by caesarean section without question. And I wanted to avoid this at all costs. So by researching and then finding people who could support me, independent midwives who knew about breech birth and natural breech birth, I was able to go through with it and to still go for the home birth. And everything was wonderful. It was the most textbook of births. Everything flowed exactly as it should. All the contractions, everything just progressed in the what they call the normal way, and I was able to birth my baby girl at home, surrounded by people I love, in a beautiful atmosphere, and no drugs. I didn't tear. There were no stitches, so no medical interventions of any kind, and we were able to welcome her in this most beautiful and calm and loving way. And that experience, especially against the prevailing consciousness of birth, where people were saying I should be going to hospital and I should be having a caesarean, was so empowering. It just made me realise that we were doing so much wrong with birth out there, and that people were being given the wrong information, and they were missing out on this incredible, empowering experience. The power and energy that surged through my body through that birth was like nothing I'd ever experienced before, and it really highlighted the potential that was within me and obviously within every woman. So from that moment on, I became an ambassador for natural and empowered birth, and I was very committed to the process. And what that birth really taught me was that you can have the birth you want with knowledge and preparation and commitment and support, bringing in the people that really support your goal. And so then I went on, and for my second baby, the first baby was born in the United Kingdom, in England, in London, and then we'd moved to Australia by the time I was having my second baby. And Australia has a very medicalised birth system. However, they also have independent midwives, and I found a wonderful midwife who supported my desire to have a water birth, and everything went beautifully with the pregnancy. I never had I didn't even see a doctor throughout the pregnancy, and he was born in our home underwater. I birthed him myself, with just the people around me supporting once again. However, I was able to just bring him gently out of the water. He lay in my arms, and indeed, he didn't even breathe for the first sort of, minute of his life. He just gently and calmly came into his body and then joined us, and we could all welcome him. And his 2-year-old sister came into the water, and welcomed him, and it was very beautiful. However, with that birth, when I was in labour, I was at a friend's place, and as the labour started to intensify, I wasn't in my home environment, and I didn't feel safe, and I didn't feel like I could really go into my primal self. And so that birth really taught me about the need for being in a safe and secure environment, and being with people that you trusted and felt that were supporting you, and also having the freedom to do whatever you wanted to do, whatever you felt was necessary, whether it be groaning or moving or writhing around, whatever it was. You needed that freedom to be able to do that, to really connect in and create that ecstatic birth experience. So 2 years later, I find myself pregnant again. This time was a bit of a surprise, and we were actually sharing our life between France and Australia at this stage, and his due date was in our time in France. So now I had to prepare for a birth in another country, my third country, and this time in France. And France is actually even more medicalised than Australia, and everybody, just about everybody, it's all hospitalised. It's they do a lot of scans. They have a lot of doctor's appointments. Epidural is very just standard treatment. So I knew I wanted to avoid that at all costs, to go into that hospital system. And so after much searching, I did find an independent midwife, and she lived a reasonable distance from our home, and we didn't have very much time to get to meet her before the birth, only two meetings prior to the actual birth. And I felt that we'd never really developed a great trust or bond between us. And as I went into the birth, I found that I really had a negative thought form, which was that I had to do it all on my own, and that I didn't have support, and that my mother, who was there and had been at the other births and been wonderful, was also feeling afraid and with having language barriers and other things going on. So it was a situation where I wasn't feeling supported, and I wasn't in a situation of just absolute trust. And what happened with this birth is that it stalled and everything stopped. And that sort of confused me and threw us all into a bit of a spin. And the midwife suggested that she break the waters. And in the end, my lack of trust allowed me to agree to that intervention. And that changed the nature of the birth, so that it came on very quickly and very strongly. And when he was born, the cord was wrapped around his neck and he was blue. And I mean, he was perfectly fine, and he pinked up and he did everything very quickly. However, it was more traumatic than it needed to be. And I knew inside myself that had come from that lack of trust and support that I'd been feeling throughout that birth. And although he was born at home without, once again, no pain relief and no stitches, nothing like that, and it was, a wonderful experience, I know that if I'd been surrounded with more trusting support, it could have been an even more empowering outcome. However, my feeling about that now is that everything was exactly as it should be, because in each of those births I learnt valuable lessons about birth, and it's what's allowing me now to speak about it and write about it with a much broader experience.